years, these have been the ultimate dreams of high-achieving teenagers who scored high marks in the annual Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education examinations. Unknown to many, the medical profession that many of the candidates dream of is today lined by many stumbling blocks. It is now a career filled with terminologies such as downing tools. Medics now walk around carrying placards while marching the streets. The biggest demand is the fulfillment of promises contained in some collective bargain agreements signed years back. Unknown to these innocent souls yearning to be doctors, there's some reality check. As KTN News found out, by the time a Kenyan medical trainee walks out of university as a doctor, they have accumulated over 3.5 million shillings in loans. Loans that must be cleared by the youthful medics before they embark on planning their lives. But this is only if they're educated through funding by the Higher Education Loans Board. The self-sponsored ones would have spent 3.8 million shillings on fees alone, besides other expenses incurred on accommodation, transport, and food. Doctors have been on strike for weeks. The payment of intern doctors acting as a catalyst for the industrial action. During an interview on KTN News, the Cabinet Secretary for Public Service, Moses Kuria, ruffled some feathers.
You're a student, like any other. There is nothing like practicing a student. We have got what we are calling the medical registrars, yeah, who are a different category altogether. This is a guy who just finished his CAT, continuous assessment test. There's no difference.
No, there's a huge difference.
There's no difference, my friend. You've just been brainwashed. You've just been brainwashed to believe that there's a difference. This guy was doing his last CAT with a guy from engineering who have done 5 years as well. This guy has just done 6 years.
Are they students? They graduated from medical school before getting the internship. When one graduates, is he or she still a student?
Intern is not a student, because then they will go back to the university to graduate. So they are not students, and it's not a period for being a student.
The cost of training doctors varies. There are self-sponsored students and those who rely on the Higher Education Loans Board. Either way, the costs are colossal.
I think lately the University of Nairobi is charging between 600,000 to 700,000 per year per student for the private paying students. And actually that amount is then, absorbed by the government for government-sponsored students. You'll find that a small number is actually sponsored by the government, possibly about 100 or so students. The rest are self-paid. So if, again, you tried costing for training a doctor, the figures could be much higher than that.
They're not cheap courses, because annually the cheapest one charges 500,000 for tuition only. 500,000 Kenya shillings per year. That one you have not factored in accommodation where they are going to be living, because they have to live near school, because they need to be constantly reading, they need to have discussion groups, so they need to live near school, so hostel fees and all that. And incidentals, you're not factored in things like the lab coats, the stethoscopes, the things that they need to train through.
The cost of training a doctor is very expensive. By the time they're even finishing their training, they already owe so much. If your parents even paid for you, if right now you're to do medicine and your parents decide to pay for you, per year they'll pay 638,000. So what has happened is that we've gotten to a point where we're even making it not accessible to the poor children. So that mama mboga might not have her child becoming a doctor. Where is she getting 638,000? So what will happen for the mama mboga child to become a doctor? They'll have to take the help 571,000 per year, pay and be expected to pay it at the end of it all. So by the time that child of mama mboga is coming to help her family, it doesn't exist. So it's a continuous cycle of poverty.
Dr. Marion says the mistreatment of doctors can force doctors to find ways to survive.
The nature of human is, if you're put in a very tough spot, you're likely to adopt. And the worst thing that can happen is force these young people to get some meager pays. If they will try to survive, what are they going to do to the patients? If they have to survive, they will start making patients to pay for procedures which they shouldn't be paying. So you start losing the integrity of a profession by umefinyilia hao sana, then they start to find a way to survive.
However, the president urged the doctors to live within their means.
We must live within our means. We must live within our means, fellow countrymen and women. We cannot continue to spend the money we don't have.
Dr. Marion says there's a law that takes care of internship period, a CBA that has been negotiated between the employer, who is the government, and the union representing doctors, and has been registered in court as a document that is living.
Then you wake up one day and you decide, we cannot obey these, so let's just leave it first and decide how much we should pay you. In a country where we have failed to fight corruption, in a country where our spending, especially by state officers, is a sad scenario.
Dr. Marion adds the country should focus on giving its people fundamental rights, that is education, good health, and security.
What we are seeing is, number one, killing the profession of medicine in a way that no young child will dream to become a doctor in this country. It will be so sad. The poor will have no hope when they see their children performing very well in school. Even the highly thought of professions have already been destroyed.
Over the years, people have known that the cost of training a doctor is not cheap. But really, what is the cost of training a doctor?
It has transitioned over the years. And medicine used to be something that the government would pay for. They will pay for it, then they'll even give you money to help your parents with your siblings. That was way back in the 80s. Whoever did their medicine in the 80s did not suffer the cost of training, because the government actually invested to ensure that people are well trained and they don't have to think about their poverty from where they are coming from to become good doctors.
When she trained in the early 2000s, her annual fee was 38,000 Kenya shillings. The parallel programs were not available. Currently, the tuition fee is 638,000 per year for self-sponsored students, and students who go for help are given 571,000 per year. Dr. Marion says the help has a compounding interest of 4%. So, 571,000 for 6 years on the minimum gives around 3,240,000. By the time one is graduating as a doctor, they owe the government that amount plus interests.
571,000 for 6 years on the minimum. The training for medicine on the minimum is 6 years. Gives you around 3.24 million Kenyan shillings. And we've not added the interest. So by the time you're graduating as a doctor, you owe the government that amount of money with its interest. And mind you, the interest continues to accumulate until the day you get a job, so that you're able to start paying back. So by the time you graduate and become a doctor, you already owe the government a lot of money. Then you come out here, it's very sad to think about it, that you will come out here to the field and somebody says, during internship you'll be paid a stipend. This stipend, subjected to tax, you cannot even start paying your loans. You cannot sustain yourself.
The training of doctors takes 6 years. The first 3 years, they study about basic sciences, anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry. You take those number of years to understand how the human body works by operating the cadavers.
The first 3 years, you are doing the preclinical training, so you are just on the theory, yeah? And the pretty intense training that you must, like, you go to class at 8, you leave at 5. In between, you go to the morgue, the dissection table, you are able to dissect cadavers.
A cadaver is a dead human body used by medical students, physicians, and other scientists during training and research. They use them to identify diseases, determine causes of death, and provide tissue to repair defects in a living human being.
They'll do that for the first 2 years. Anatomy is a whole 2-year continuous training. And you work from the toe to the head. It's the whole, and you'll work on every single structure in that body. I will have to know which blood supply goes to your kidneys. How do I navigate that? I'll have to know what is this, where is that? And this, you're trained. It's an intense program.
Physiology will help in knowing how the body works. In case there's a fever, they come up with diagnosis. Biochemistry helps in understanding the system. What are the chemicals changing? How much does the pain change? And how the patient is thinking. The third year, they are taught about forensic medicine. The fourth, fifth, and sixth year is a whole series of clinical period for the medical students. Fourth will be introduction, but by sixth, they're supposed to be ready to serve the population.
When you enter into the clinical spaces, as a medical student, you work with your teachers. And most of the time, you will work with other professionals employed in that hospital. So if, for example, I give an example of, let's say, Moi University. The training hospital is Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. So on the fourth year, you are now allowed to go to the wards.
And once those formative years are done, you then graduate and start doing what we call clinical work now. So the formative stages or years happen in Chiromo for students coming to the University of Nairobi. Then the clinical years take place at Kenyatta National Hospital. So those that then come to Kenyatta National Hospital will go through various stages of training. But key is that these students then can be able to visit the wards, go to the community, understand what is afflicting the community, understand what goes on in the community, and they can then be able to come back and relate with what goes on from a medical perspective.
Students are allowed to take history of the patient, examining them and presenting to the teachers. They will rotate in several departments so that they now understand what they learned in basic sciences. They are mentored and examined during their journey. They can just observe operations in theatre. As students, they can assist but do not do a procedure because they are not licensed doctors. During the clinical years, exams change. They are given living patients to talk to as a test. If they satisfy the requirements, they will move to the next level.
Based on your levels, so you will be given something called community-based education and service, where you will go to the villages, you will collect some data, you will go to the health centers, you'll tend to see how some clinics work and all that. So what is happening? You're being nurtured into the profession so that you are able to understand it. By the time you're being posted there, it's nothing new to you.
Once they graduate, the Ministry of Health and the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council have put in place a process to be fully registered and practice independently as a doctor. The internship period is defined within that structure. After graduation, the interns have a temporary license from KMPDC that runs for 12 months. They will attend to patients under supervision. They are not students, hence the temporary license to work.
The internship posting should be in January, February, around there, and in June, July. 2 postings. So that if you finish at the right time, you'll get the next posting. The policy says that you should be posted 30 days after graduating. So most universities, when they don't align their graduations with this date for posting, you end up that somebody finishes school in maybe July or in August. Then they have to wait till February. Get that? And if you have a case where government does not honor their January, February posting, like happened this year, that the January, February, this happened. So the guys who cleared in July, who have been home from July up to now.
That in turn is expected to be the first point of contact with the patient and the supervisor probably kind of shadowing them to make sure that they continuously do the right thing.
The moment you finish your first degree, you graduate, but then you would like to be assessed through this internship process for proficiency purposes. So remember, by the time you are finishing and graduating, you are actually someone who should be relied upon. But then you need some level of supervision for you to fine-tune your skills.
Just the same way you go to a hotel and you get a reception, always getting a reception. That is the same. You might never meet the manager by the time you're in that hotel, but you will always get the receptionist. So the first point of contact, if you come to the labor ward, if you come to my labor ward, you will get my midwives, you will get my medical officer intern. The first person who will see you will be the midwife, but the first doctor who will see you will be the medical officer intern. And why I will tell you they are not students is because actually they are allowed to write in your file. We don't allow students to write in a patient's file. Why? Because a file is a medical legal document.
Dr. Kariuki, the CEO of Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council, KMPDC, says interns require those that have been there before them to guide them on how to translate the academic knowledge that is the apprenticeship period. Years before, internship was always guaranteed immediately after completing school. However, times have changed and this is no longer guaranteed. All medical schools have to maintain certain standards for them to produce quality graduates. Currently, Kenya has 11 medical schools and 2 dental schools. Without challenges, the medical program takes at least 6 years. Currently, approximately 1,000 doctors per year graduate.
As a medical council, one of our key mandates is to set the minimum standards for the training of medicine and dentistry. That would mean that we set what is called the core curriculum, what we will expect of a doctor trained in Kenya or a dentist trained in Kenya to have been trained on for them to be able to provide accurate and quality services to Kenyans.
For the Kenyans who train locally, KMPDC will ascertain the quality provided by universities. Once they graduate, they do not take them through an exam before getting an internship. However, the case is different for those who train in foreign countries.
Those who train outside of our borders, they undertake an examination because we have not been able to ascertain the level of facilities and training that they undertake in the countries that they go to, whether within Africa or within the rest of the world in any continent.
There's another category of those who train outside the borders and take internship in those countries. For them, once they provide proof, they only undertake a pre-registration examination. According to Dr. Shikuku, the internship period in Kenya is key.
Even during internship, you can actually determine where your strengths are. There are people who make decisions during internship and decide that, oh, you know, I'm not going to be a surgeon. I want to be a pediatrician, or I want to be something else. So after internship, people actually tend to understand where their strengths lie, and they can make better decisions thereafter that helps them to grow professionally. And that is what informs, the master's program. So people, once they have identified their areas of interest, then go for further training, which again takes different durations for different courses. And the durations could range from 3 to 6 years for a master's program.
After the internship, the supervisor, who is a registered practitioner in Kenya, appends their signature on a document that certifies that the doctor is well trained and can work independently. They then go to the medical council for full registration. They are given a registration number that cannot be shared. For those who want to practice, request for licenses to practice within the Kenyan borders. For those who want to practice outside the Kenyan borders, they require registration to seek for opportunities elsewhere. The ministry stopped the automatic absorption of doctors for several years now. This means that when an intern secures their licenses, they embark on job seeking.
The county is even blackmail them or con them, telling them that continue staying around, continue volunteering. When you have an opening, we'll absorb you. So they are volunteering there for nothing, no pay, no nothing. 6 months down the line, nothing is coming, you're frustrated, your savings have all gone down. You kill yourself like what happened in Kagundo. Yeah, this young doctor stayed around for 6 more months, hoping that they'll consider him. He ran out of funds. There was nothing coming forth, and he had to take his life. And he said as much in the suicide note last year.
Doctors who fail to adhere to the strict regulations that guide their profession face penalties, but it starts with a probe to ascertain the culpability. The council has various procedures to punish doctors who may have caused harm to a patient. Mechanism will ascertain whether what the doctor did was within the accepted standards, whether what they did or did not do could have affected the outcome of the patient they are treating. There are national and international guidelines on the management and treatment of all diseases. If one is found on the wrong, the council will revoke their license, and if it is a gross misconduct case, then the doctor will be deregistered. Deregistration may also include a mistake that is criminal in nature that may end up in the courts. But in case deregistration happened because of certain malpractice, then the doctor will go back to medical school. Agutu Rosa, KTN News.